Hey everyone, it's Bill D'Alessandro, one of your hosts here at Acquisitions Anonymous, and welcome back to another episode. This week we have a really interesting business. It's an elevator installation and repair business. Michael and I speculate a lot about whether this is home or commercial. We also dig into the roll-up strategy of one of the large acquirers in the space and talk about the roll-up strategy of building to be acquired by a large strategic, kind of figuring out what their acquisition strategy is and tailoring your mini roll-up to ultimately be bought by them. So I also just want to say, please hop on iTunes or wherever your podcasts are distributed. Please leave us a 5-star review if you like this episode. It really helps us out a lot. We also are sponsored this week by CloudBookkeeping.com. If you own a business, doesn't have to be a cloud business, any type of business, and you don't like bookkeeping, and who really does, hop on CloudBookkeeping.com. They've been great friends of the pod for a long time, do great accounting and bookkeeping. They can help you out. And with that, let's get into this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.
Hey, Michael here. Want to talk to you about today's sponsor for the episode, which is CloudBookkeeping.com. So Cloud Bookkeeping is actually run by my neighbor, Charlie. So I've met him in person and can attest that he's a real human being and a good person. And what Cloud Bookkeeping does is offer a full suite of bookkeeping services, all in the cloud. For you around QuickBooks and other technologies that you're using as a small business owner. So if you're interested in getting the bookkeeping part of running a business off of your plate and focusing on running your business, Charlie and his team are one to call. They can put together a bunch of other stuff in terms of helping you manage and grow your business besides just bookkeeping, sophisticated reporting, definitely helping you get your QuickBooks online set up in the right way, and a number of things around payroll as well. So definitely know them and recommend them. If you want to find out more about Cloud Bookkeeping, you can go to their website at cloudbookkeeping.com. Reach out to Charlie. I know many of you have, and see if he can help you make your running your business easier and more fun by letting them help with a lot of the bookkeeping solutions. So, and when you call, mention this podcast. It would help us and help Charlie know that we're supporting him as well. So thanks a bunch, and cloudbookkeeping.com as the sponsor for today's episode.
Michael, this week's deal is going up. we have a pretty interesting real estate related service and repair business, an elevator repair business this week. Take us into it.
Yeah. Well, as a business nerd, I've been hugely fascinated by the elevator world, and like the economic dynamics of it are incredible. And in the way it's shaken out in modern times is there's only like a handful of elevator brands that are actually meaningful in each country, right? Like if you go to Japan, right, it's I think they're all Mitsubishi, right? And here in the US there's 2 brands. Can you name them off the top of your head, Bill? Do you know the 2 that we
Otis.
see all?
There's Otis, and then there's someone else.
Yeah, the one that starts with S. It's Schindler.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's like 2 brands. It's super interesting. It's like, wait, like we have 42 different manufacturers of cars, right? Delivering cars, but really only 2 brands of elevators that matter in the United States. Like that's like a super weird natural monopoly. So it's always fascinated me. And I did end up reading a business school case study, even though I didn't go to business school, about it. And it's just fascinating how the dynamics ended up. So hopefully I can do a decent job of bringing some of that in as we talk about this business. And it is from the broker Transworld Business Advisors, and it's named East Coast Home Elevator Install and Service Business for Sale. And it is described as the following. This business is poised for a new group or person to take us to the next level. Spreading up and down the East Coast would be very easy based on its current location and staffing. Owner has a bunch of ideas, yada, yada, yada. 2022 is showing a 38% sales increase, which projects close to $10 million in 2022 sales. So I'll go back down here to the bottom and just go through the numbers here so we can see them first before we read the rest of the description. The business is listed for $7.5 million. They list a down payment of $5 million, which is very interesting. And they claim that the business is generating $1.78 million in discretionary earnings, total sales of $6.8 million, and located in your neighborhood, Bill, in North Carolina. So we figured out, it said Myrtle Beach. I thought Myrtle Beach was in South Carolina.
That would be South Carolina.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
They might. A lot of companies around here do work in both states.
Yeah. Well, because up here in the URL, they say location's Myrtle Beach. So it is what it is. Coming from Texas, like if it gets out of the state here, it's really far away. And I forget how the
Northern
East Coast
South
is.
Carolina together are like East Texas. So,
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. It's weird over there. So
it's weird. Small state.
yeah. Oh, my dad did a lot of business in South Carolina, down by Savannah area, Savannah, Georgia. And he just talks about how weird everything was. Just totally fascinating type area.
We think you're
Anyway.
weird down in Texas too, Bill. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. You're probably right. Okay. So this business has 28 employees, no inventory, no furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It was established in 2016. The owner is retiring. And so basically, so what these guys do, and I'll kind of jump around here in the listing because this is not really well organized by the broker Darlene here, who seems really nice. No hat and not touching her face. So good for Darlene in terms of her profile photo. So they service all different brands of elevators in addition to manufacturing, milling, and assembling their own hardware parts with new cutting-edge technology in their precision machine shop. It is also included in the purchase price and has cut the cost of goods over half over the past year, in addition to beginning to have its own standalone contracts for metal jobs. So the owner has consistently reinvested profits to purchase more state-of-the-art production equipment as they prepare to scale up operations. This one if a kind business is a fast-growing home and commercial elevator company doing complete installations for existing or new construction homes. Yada, yada, yada. They have a bunch of stuff, and the owner is looking for the right company and offer to leave his legacy with. He is also available to stay on as an advisor or research and development consultant as needed. Owner wants to see the business grow, but also needs to spend more time with family. So semi-retirement is the next step, and he can stay on part-time or as needed. What else is on here that I missed? I think that's it. This is a commercial and residential home. Oh, this is just home. This is very confusing. So they say home, but then here they say they do home and commercial elevator. So I guess they do both. Is that your reading here, Bill?
Yeah, I think they do both. I mean, you'd have to. There's not a ton of home elevators out there. You know what's interesting? The thing you did miss that I think is really worth calling out is they service all different brands of elevators in addition to manufacturing, milling, and assembling their own hardware parts with cutting edge technology in their cutting edge precision machine shop, which is included in the purchase price. And here we go, has cut cost of goods in half over the past year. Is in beginning also to have its own standalone contracts for metal jobs. So this is really interesting. So these guys are repairing elevators and they need metal parts to do it. Some of those metal parts might be custom, or not available if an elevator, brand or model is discontinued. So in the past, it seems like they're going out to other CNC machine shops and commissioning these parts to be made or milled. But they've decided to vertically integrate, and they've got either bought or spun up their own precision machining in-house, which cuts their cost of goods in half. Makes sense. They don't have to outsource that part of the business. And then also they are now spinning up as kind of a parallel business here in kind of that classic turn your cost centers into revenue centers, kind of strategy here. So I thought that was pretty cool and pretty sophisticated for a small business that it says here is doing, less than $10 million of sales.
Yeah. Well, and also kind of it's incongruous with what they say the story is here, right? Which is like, when was the last time you saw somebody who's in the last 2 or 3 years and getting ready for retirement building out a new machine shop, right? It's just kind of, it's like, wait, why? People who are getting ready to retire in the next 2 to 3 years, they rarely take on new major initiatives because they're mentally already retired, right? They're just headed that way. So it's interesting. I would dig into this and understand, like, why did they do that? Like, is there some kid involved in the business that maybe there was a breakup recently and the kid left, but somebody had to go in there and have the initiative to build out that machine shop? Because that's not a trivial activity, right? That's like a whole nother business to be in. And it doesn't make sense to me that somebody who's like ready to retire, like, did that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what makes me wonder, like maybe he's got a sick family member or something, because he says he needs more time with family. So semi-retirement is the next step. This kind of reads to me like somebody had a life event.
Yeah.
That's driving the transaction.
The other thing that comes
started in 2016. It was started in 2016, so it's only 5 or 6 years old. Something happened here. It's growing really well. He just invested a bunch of money. It's profitable. and he's retiring. I think this has got to be life event driven, which, by the way, is a great reason to sell and buy a business. Those are my favorite scenarios as a buyer, because that's a plausible reason that, like, there's not something the seller is trying to hide from you, right? Like, oh, they're selling at the top, or there's new regulation coming, or, like, I mean, as sad as it is, like, my wife is sick, so I want to spend more time with her.
Yeah.
That is a very transparent, ethical reason to sell a business.
Yeah. And I think also it makes you feel good when you're involved in a situation like that. I mean, for me, like, I've done transactions where we've enabled somebody to go live their best life. And like, that's super fun. Like for a year afterwards, you're getting pictures of them like out fishing, or, we did one in Europe where like the guy moved to like the south of Spain and was just like living his best life at like 72, and just like so stoked and so thankful, because it turns into a win-win. Like, I think that's one of the nice things about this. Like, in buying businesses, you can actually really help people as well. Despite it being kind of a naturally adversarial process at the beginning.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Michael, at the beginning of the episode, that there is a kind of natural duopoly here with Schindler and Otis. It's important to know also, if you're going to be coming into an industry like this, what's going on in the industry. So I was doing some Googling, and I'm semi-familiar with this because my wife used to work at a company called United Technologies, which is a big industrial conglomerate that owned Otis for about 45 years. And they actually just spun it back out as an independent company in 2020. But what's interesting is, if you look up Otis's kind of press releases, they're now publicly traded, Otis Worldwide, OTIS, on the New York Stock Exchange. So they put out press releases, you can read their 10Ks and Qs, et cetera. One thing that their management is very transparent about pursuing is they have a strategy to roll up elevator servicing companies. So Otis makes the elevators, right? And then they go, geez, we want some more service revenue. All these independent repair shops are vacuuming up all of the aftermarket work. So they actually have recently announced several acquisitions. So, for example, one I found very easily, end of 2020, Otis has acquired Bay State Elevator, which includes its service portfolio and operations in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, and upstate New York. And the quote from the president of Otis Americas says, "It demonstrates our commitment to strategically accelerate our service portfolio growth." So depending on kind of I imagine there's a very specific template for what Otis, and I imagine Schindler's probably doing the same thing, right? Because birds of a feather flock together. So I bet the thing here for large elevator manufacturers is to roll up their service providers. So there could be a very interesting M&A strategy here to look around the country, right? Because they're going to want scale. The one I just read was in like 4 or 5 states. So there could be an M&A strategy where you go around and you do the mini roll-up, right? Put them all, you get North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia. You do a couple years of integration, and then you flip it to Otis for what I would imagine is huge multiple expansion. But what you'd have to do is you'd have to buy them right. You'd have to make sure that the ones you bought not only were good businesses on their own, but were focused on Otis Elevator, right? We're mostly commercial, because I imagine that's what Otis cares about. You have to kind of figure out the profile. But there's a whole kind of strategy of figure out which large corporates are doing roll-ups, and then do mini roll-ups and sell them.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, that was my big question as we started talking about this. Was this is like prime time private equity, some bigger buyer who has cheaper capital than you? Why? To me, it was like, well, wait, why haven't they bought this yet? And I think it ties back to kind of one of the things we see often, which is you and I dig into these things. We're like, I don't know anything about this industry. Well, let's start thinking about it. And to me, the actual most fun thing in terms of like looking at businesses to buy is learning about the industry through that process, right? Like, so I'm sure you've gone through this too, Bill, but like the best way to hear about that industry is to talk to an expert, and the person that will definitely tell you the truth or some variation of the truth is somebody trying to sell their business, and will give you a lot of context on it. It's fine and dandy to go to GLG or one of these expert networks, but man, the person who's like been in there in the trenches running one of these little businesses, like you'll learn so much, right? Like I've learned so much about little tiny software businesses by talking with hundreds of owners to understand where their challenges are and stuff like that. And that's the same thing here. But to tie all that back, it's like, well, wait, like private equity, if you look at the macro here, private equity has had a bazillion amounts of money, has been doing roll-ups for decades, has seen that this type of services, especially when you're dealing with a life or death product like elevators, can be hugely valuable. You can extract a lot of value out of it, and they haven't bought this yet, right? Like, that makes me wonder that there's something going on here that we just don't understand.
Yep, which there might be. I mean, it could be, not that it's a bad business, but it could be, as we suggested, maybe just mostly home. Maybe like 70% of their portfolio is home elevators. And that's not attractive to Otis corporate, which means it's not attractive to roll up to private equity, which means those buyers are passing on it. Doesn't mean it's bad, but you'd want to understand why that dynamic before you bought this business.
Yeah. So my house has an elevator in it. I don't know if I ever told you this.
No. All right. So are you a customer? You would be if they were in Texas.
Maybe. Well, okay. So here's the deal. We bought the house from a very nice couple who retired and moved out to a lake somewhere, right? And they're good people, but their daughter had a physical disability or set of physical disabilities that required them to install an elevator in the house. So we have an elevator. We use it maybe 2 times a month because because we're just like, we're trying to have the family move more. So we're just like, no, walk your butt up the stairs. And sometimes we use it to move luggage and laundry and stuff like that. But by and large, we never do it. I think the interesting thing here about what's going on in this market is, as you start to look at baby boomers who are getting to an age where moving up and down stairs are a problem. There are a lot of 2 and 3 story homes, especially here in Texas and built around the country in the suburbs, that they're not going to move out of, but they're going to have to figure out how to get upstairs. So I've seen a lot of that where, at least here, the new installs and the service, like, this appears to be a growing market, and I like that aspect of it. But I bet you're exactly right, Bill. I bet when you dig into this business, it's 90% home, and then there's some commercial stuff here and there that they do. But by and large, that commercial stuff is going towards the Otis partner, because it's interesting. I would have expected them, like, say, Otis and Schindler, to be, if they were a commercial heavy service provider, to list that they're a partner with those folks, right? Because just like the aftermarket, like aerospace parts, right, where people will pay $50 for a 45-cent nut or a bolt to fix their plane because you don't want the plane falling out of the sky because you save 30 cents on a bolt. The same thing goes on with Schindler and Otis, right, where you pay up for the parts. But these guys are not doing that. They're not reselling those parts, or they're not getting them from the manufacturer to service those things, which has me to bring this all the way back to the circle of life here, which means, like, I think they're maybe doing very little commercial stuff. I bet you're going to see this as mostly home, and that's why this business is still on the market.
Yep, I would think so too. Doesn't mean it's a bad business, just means it might not be roll-upable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so the dynamics are totally different in home, and you can see it in the case of who makes the brands of those home elevators, right? The ones that we have at my house, I don't know who made that, and I don't care, because so what if it breaks? Like, we're not going to use it anyway. But if your elevator breaks in a 30-story building, like, you got some real problems, right? And it's a total different dynamic where you don't have the things happening in commercial happening in home. My parents have a house with an elevator in it, totally different manufacturer. I don't even know who the manufacturer is, and I don't think anybody cares. They may not even be in business anymore because it's been in there for 15 years, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So
it's important what you did note, though, about new installs in the home, because, as we have this big aging population, the trend is, I think we've done a deal on a home healthcare provider before, the trend toward aging in place, right? Wanting to stay in your home longer rather than go to an elder care home. And a big thing is, you got a 2-story house, you're going to need an elevator. My parents are hoping to stay in their home, and they've got a 2-story house, and they've already figured out, if we need it, this is exactly where the elevator is going to go, right? Like, they got a plan. So I would think there's a pretty good tailwind on home elevators, even if it's not as attractive margin-wise as commercial elevators.
It's interesting. I just clicked on the broker to try to figure out where we think this is. It's definitely in Myrtle Beach, because all of her other listings are all in Myrtle Beach. Everything she has here. Ooh, check this out, Bill. Okay. A fine dining Miami-style restaurant. They're just calling for a man with your This, like, if you had to give me a list, like, Girdley, make a list of businesses Bill would most hate to run, and a Miami-style restaurant in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina would be
In
in the
Myrtle
top
Beach,
5.
that only makes $200,000 a year and ruins your life.
Oh man, that would be an awesome reality show. Like if you were running this and I would just show up and order like Miller Lights and get really drunk in your bar every night. I think it'd be awesome.
Like over, yeah. Then my hostess has to throw you out, and then she's in my office crying because she's psychologically damaged because of you. Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, they have that show Undercover Boss, but it could be the opposite of that, where it's like Girdley drunk at your business. That's the whole business. That's the whole show.
Girdley terrorizes your business. What do you do? Like Girdley comes into your med spa and asks you to wax his entire body. What do you do?
Man, I think that would hurt. She has another listing here for a BurgerFi style super trendy burger place that it's doing supposedly $90,000 a year in seller discretionary earnings and $159,000, which I queued on this just because I've loved the BurgerFi chain, but I don't know if have you been to BurgerFi? Do they have that in North
Carolina?
So BurgerFi is basically, it is like a burger cafe that is walk-in only in most of the places, and they serve like organic, high-quality beef, like very high-quality potatoes. So it's like a step above it's like what Whole Foods is to like grocery. It is that for burgers, right? And like my kids and I used to go there all the time. And it's interesting to see the one near us like close down, like they stopped doing well. So it's I think a testament to that kind of that franchise challenge that you have. Is franchising can be amazing we talked about this in previous episodes. Franchising can be amazing if you get on the right franchise, but like if you get on the wrong one, like, you know, you share in the upside, you're going to share in the downside too.
I think we got to get someone on the show who is making a ton of money in franchise restaurants, or really even non-franchise restaurants. Because God, I hate restaurants so much. Like they give me the willies. I mean, just like nights and weekends. You know, low rent employees, drunk customers, thin margins. I mean, oh my God, it's just my nightmare business. But you know, some people make a lot of money in them. We should have someone on like a good restaurant. I would love to see it.
Yeah, amazing. Back to the elevator thing. So one of the things it's cute on me is this pattern where you can make a ton of money is if you can figure out how to align yourselves as closely as possible to life or death decisions for purchasing agents, you can make a lot of money. And that's like to some extent how Otis and Schindler and all those guys have incredible aftermarket parts businesses. It's because like, hey, if you put the wrong cable on this, or the wrong button, or the wrong computer on this elevator, you're going to potentially hurt people. And the same thing goes also for, I don't know if you've listened to it, the 50X podcast that Patrick O'Shaughnessy put out recently about Transdigm. Have you listened to that?
No.
Definitely recommend it. They have like they interview like the guy who like put it all together. It's basically a PE roll-up done as an opco, and like what they figured out was all of these like airplane part manufacturers were way undercharging for aftermarket parts. So basically their whole model as Transdigm was to go in, buy these companies, run them a bit better, and then like 5x all the aftermarket parts, and everybody would just keep paying. Like it was just amazing. So I highly recommend that podcast. After you, listener, give us a 5-star review for this podcast.
I love that as a roll-up strategy, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to do a roll-up, and they like big brain it. And they're like, okay, we're going to outsource all the back office ops to India. And then, you know, we're going to strike a huge agreement with the one chicken supplier and share costs across all of our restaurants. And like, there's just a lot of execution risk there. But I love the thesis where it's like, we're just going to buy them, or we're going to raise the price. We don't have to do anything else. We'll buy them, raise the price, like integrate the operations a little bit. But if all we do is raise the price, the thesis works, right? I just love that, the simplicity.
Super cool. Well, hey, I got to end it this one. I got to jump on another call, but this is a fun one. I love me some elevators.
Love it. Elevate. You start with elevators, and we're all over the board. That's what makes Acquisitions Anonymous great. That's it for another episode. We'll see y'all next week.